Welcome to the Hollywood Hustle channel, presented by Molly and Lester.
Hello, I'm Molly.
And I'm Lester.
And we're extremely excited to be your hosts on Hollywood Hustle.
In this podcast, we'll be deep diving into Charles Lenhoff's journal, Hollywood Hustle.
Hi, in episode number 8, we will talk about mistakes made during the litigation. The defendants UTA and ICM spent over 35 months misleading the courts, spinning the truth, and attempting to isolate Lenhoff in the business community. Defendants have threatened Lenhoff's legal counsel with Rule 11 actions. The defendants have played a funhouse of legal games and deception by attempting to negotiate a settlement that was a Trojan horse, disguising an indemnification of ICM, and then ambushed Lenhoff with a Los Angeles Superior Court cross-complaint. The defendants then maneuvered and filed a false and misleading complaint with the California Labor Department, accusing Lenhoff of multiple fiduciary breaches and demanding his license be revoked, which would put Lenhoff out of business. And it goes on and on and on. At one point during the litigation, Lenhoff was working with a dozen lawyers on his payroll, a statistician, a judgment enforcer, a retired Superior Court judge, a couple of jokers from the Justice Department, his California congressman, Adam Schiff, a diversity expert, 2 industry experts, the California State Labor Commissioner, the head disciplinary dude at the State Bar of California, a licensed translator in India, the Beverly Hills Bar Association, and the WGA, all while trying to keep Lenhoff's act together and his business running. Overwhelming, to say the least, but he survived. Had Lenhoff known about the price-fixing information that Haskell at William Morris Agency orchestrated with Nancy Josephson at ICM, Lee Gabler at CAA, Ari Emanuel at Endeavor, and Sam Gores at Paradigm earlier on in the pleadings, he could have saved a ton of time and money. But as his lawyer Phil Kaplan says, conspirators rarely sit for group portraits. Again, there's no picture of Lucky Luciano, Frank Costello, and Vito Genovese sitting around a table planning illegal deals in front of witnesses. Lenhoff seriously regrets not sharing the Haskell price-fixing information with Rick Levy at their February 15, 2016 meeting before the third amended complaint was tossed on April 20, 2016. Maybe they could have settled the dispute had Rick Levy known the facts that Lenhoff had discovered. Let's dive deeper.
Thank you, Molly. I'm Lester. Hi, everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. Today, we're going to be looking at a story about resilience, legal battles, kind of the whole shebang. It's about the mistakes made by Lenhoff, a Hollywood talent agent who took on some of the biggest agencies. But what's fascinating is that even with all these setbacks, he really embodies that Kung Fu-zy philosophy.
Right.
Glory is not in never falling, but in rising every time he falls.
Yeah, and rise he did. I mean, imagine juggling a dozen lawyers and experts and officials, all while you're trying to keep your business afloat.
Oh, I can't even imagine.
The pressure must have been unreal.
Yeah.
But he persevered. And what's interesting is that even though he made mistakes along the way, what he uncovered about price fixing was used by the Writers Guild of America to win their antitrust case.
Really?
Yeah, which ultimately led to the end of TV packaging.
Wow, so even in defeat, his efforts had a major ripple effect on the industry. That's wild.
Absolutely.
So let's rewind a bit and talk about those early missteps. Where do we even begin?
Well, one of the first mistakes Lenhoff made was focusing too much on the implosion of the Screen Actors Guild franchise agreement.
Okay.
He thought this was key to proving that the big agencies, the Uber agencies, as he called them, were monopolizing the market.
Oh, okay.
But later he realized this was misplaced.
I see. Why was proving this shared monopoly so challenging? And how did that cost him valuable time?
Well, the whole concept of a shared monopoly isn't even recognized by the Ninth Circuit Court.
Okay.
That's where the case was filed. And the judge really hammered him on this.
I bet.
Also, if he'd focused on the price-fixing scheme going on behind the scenes, like way earlier on, he could have saved so much time and energy.
So it's like picking your battles from the start. He was fixated on this one thing and missed a bigger picture, I guess.
Yeah.
Did he also have trouble navigating the legal complexities of the case?
Definitely. He admitted he got bogged down in arguments with opposing counsel over legal jargon, semantics, all that.
It's easy to get lost in the weeds.
Absolutely. And looking back, he realized there was a certain naivete in those early dealings.
How so?
Like he thought he could outsmart his opponents purely on, technical grounds.
Oh, I see. So we have this focus on the wrong issue and then struggling with legal technicalities. What other early missteps did he make?
Well, there was this bad hire, this lawyer named Max Bleecker.
Okay.
Lenhoff learned the hard way that a lawyer's initial enthusiasm doesn't always equal long-term commitment.
Yeah, I could see that.
Max, unfortunately, wasn't as invested in the case as he first seemed.
Oof, that's got to be a tough realization in the middle of a high-stakes battle. Did this really impact the case?
It did, unfortunately. Lenhoff later found out that Max was dealing with some health issues, wasn't as dedicated.
Oh.
Luckily, Max's associate, Taylor, who was brilliant, managed to pick up the slack.
So good.
But having the wrong lawyer, especially early on, can really set you back.
It's like that weak link in the chain, right? It compromises everything. So we've got those early missteps, the wrong focus, the legal jargon struggles, and then a bad hire. It sounds like the odds were stacked against him from the get-go.
You could say that.
But you said earlier the information he uncovered about price fixing had a huge impact.
Oh, yeah.
That must have been a win in all this.
Absolutely. It just shows his tenacity. Even though his case didn't, ultimately prevail, his efforts changed the industry.
Wow. So we've got the groundwork laid with these early mistakes. What happens as the case keeps going? Does it snowball from here?
Well, yeah, it does kind of snowball.
Yeah.
As the case went on, there was more pressure on Lenhoff and, well, more mistakes happened.
Okay. Like what?
One of the big ones involves this statement he'd gotten from Sam Haskell, big name in the industry. Haskell had actually spilled about this whole TV packaging price-fixing scheme.
No way.
He wouldn't officially sign a declaration.
Oh, come on. Why not? That would have been huge for Lenhoff's case.
Yeah. You'd think, right. But Lenhoff's lawyers, they thought they couldn't include it in their amended complaint because of these things called the Rules of Civil Procedure.
The rules of what now?
Rules of Civil Procedure, they're these rules that basically say how a lawsuit has to go in federal court.
Oh, good.
So his lawyers thought they had to introduce it later, but the judge disagreed.
Ah. So disagreement on procedure. Could you explain a little more about these rules of civil procedure and how did they mess things up?
Well, it's complicated, but basically, Lenhoff's team thought the rules meant they couldn't submit the declaration right then. They thought it had to be later, during discovery.
During what?
Discovery, that's when they gather evidence. But the judge said, nope, that's not how it works. So, boom, this key piece of evidence is gone.
Just like that.
Yeah, pretty much.
Man, that's rough. It makes you wonder what would happen if they'd gotten that declaration in.
Totally a missed opportunity. And speaking of missed opportunities, Lenhoff also says he should have emphasized the contractual obligations more
in his fight with Dokoza's contractual obligations to him.
You mean like her obligations to him on the contract? Isn't that like contract law 101?
It is. And Lenhoff, looking back, he's like, man, I should have hammered that point way harder.
Sometimes going back to basics is the best move.
Totally agree. Anyway, let's jump to the appeals process. Things get really interesting here. Lenhoff admits that he made a big mistake, a big one, by not trying to appeal to the judge's emotions during the appellate court hearing.
Wait, he could do that? I always thought those hearings were super formal, just legal arguments back and forth. How could he bring emotion into it?
He could have, made it personal, talked directly to the judges, maybe even brought his wife for that extra punch.
Oh, wow.
He basically missed a chance to make a human connection, to let the judges really feel what was at stake for him.
So even in a courtroom, it's not just about the law, it's about connecting with people.
For sure. And speaking of human connection, Lenhoff also tried to guess how the judges would rule based on their backgrounds, past decisions.
Tried to predict the future. How'd that go?
Not well at all. The judge he thought would be on his side, totally uninterested, the one he thought was against him, actually seemed open to his arguments. And the wild card judge, totally unpredictable.
Humans, right?
Yeah.
Always got to throw a wrench in the works. So, after that hearing, what happened?
Well, that's another regret for Lenhoff. He wishes he'd tried to strike a settlement right then, with the defendants and their lawyers, everyone right there in the room.
Like in the heat of the moment? Do you think they would have gone for it?
Hard to say, but Lenhoff, he felt like the energy in the room after the hearing, it created this unique chance. Maybe emotions were running high or the defendants were feeling a bit shaky. He just wishes he'd taken that chance.
I'd say it's 2020, right?
Totally. And speaking of choices, Lenhoff also realizes he made a strategic error filing his case in federal court instead of state court.
Why was that bad? I don't really get the legal stuff.
So in federal court, because of the Supreme Court case called Twombly, it's super hard to prove an antitrust case without early discovery.
Early what now?
Discovery, remember, it's gathering evidence.
Right.
But in state court, under the Cartwright Act, he could have started that process much sooner.
I see.
Could have given him more leverage, a stronger case.
Okay, so he picked the wrong battleground from the start. Then what?
To make things worse, he totally ignored PR, like public relations.
Right.
He admits he completely neglected it.
That's a big miss, especially these days.
Huge. It let the other side control the story. They made him look bad, and he just stayed silent.
Ouch.
Yeah.
So lots of strategic errors, missed opportunities. Did Lenhoff, give in to anything he later regretted?
Oh, yeah. He really fought against letting the other side have more pages for their briefs.
Oh, interesting.
He felt like they were trying to drown him in paperwork, but his own lawyer pressured him, so he caved.
That feeling of being outmaneuvered.
Exactly. And he realized later that even small stuff like that, it can really matter, especially when you're up against people with tons of resources.
Makes sense. So we've covered a lot: early mistakes, strategy blunders, missed chances. This whole thing must have taken a toll on him, right?
Absolutely. Actually, the next batch of mistakes, they show just how much pressure he was under. He was making decisions out of frustration, maybe even desperation.
Let's get into that in part 3 then. This deep dive is definitely showing that the path to glory is never a straight line. We're talking about how much pressure Lenhoff was under. What kind of decisions did he make that he now regrets?
Some of it he calls it stupid shit.
Stupid shit.
Yeah, things that seemed funny then, but now he's like, why?
Okay, like what?
Lenhoff sent a live goat in Africa to John Morrissey, who was a Sony executive who was giving him a hard time.
What? A live goat?
Yeah.
That's an interesting gift. I mean, I guess it's memorable.
I'm sure it was, but it was more a reflection of the stress he was under, I think.
Yeah. It shows that even when you try to stay level-headed, sometimes things just get to you.
For sure. And another thing, he decided not to go for a class action lawsuit.
Why not? Wouldn't that have been good?
Well, it could have brought in other show creators, the ones also being hurt by the agencies.
Right.
It would have given them all a voice, maybe more power.
So, strength in numbers, even in court.
Exactly. Lenhoff regrets not leveraging his relationships with Rick Rosen at WME and Shelley Sroloff at CAA to see if they could help broker a settlement deal with UTA and ICM. But they never returned his calls. Guess they forgot the famous Jeffrey Katzenberg memo about returning every call. Just think, the Uber agencies could have settled with Lenhoff for a few lousy dollars early on, while the Haskell price-fixing information still have not been disclosed to the courts. The Uber agencies could have buried that info and hidden it from the WGA. They could have saved TV packaging and their agencies billions, perhaps trillions of dollars.
Wow. I guess Hollywood's not all about loyalty when big money's involved. So we've got the regrets, the pressure, the bad decisions. What was the final straw, the thing that really took him down?
The worst mistake, the one that ended it all, was a procedural error. His lawyers messed up filing an amended notice of appeal.
Okay, and in plain English, what does that mean?
This notice was supposed to include all the stuff about price fixing, the evidence Lenhoff had worked so hard to get.
Right.
But because of this error, the court just tossed it out, wouldn't even look at it.
Are you kidding me? All that work, all that evidence, gone because of a technicality.
Yep. Lenhoff, he just says, I was screwed.
Oh, man. This whole thing really shows how one tiny mistake can just derail everything.
It does. But even though Lenhoff lost his case, remember, his work did make a difference. The Writers Guild, they used his info to fight TV packaging and win.
That's true. He did help change the industry, even if it wasn't the way he planned.
Right. So it makes you think, if Lenhoff could go back and fix just one mistake, which one would it be?
That's a good question. Not just for Lenhoff, but for all of us.
Yeah.
What's that one thing we wish we could change?
Exactly. Lenhoff's story, the ups and downs, the smart moves and the blunders, it's got lessons for everyone, whether you're in a legal fight or just dealing with life's challenges.
It really does. Thanks for taking us through this deep dive. It's been fascinating.
My pleasure.
And everyone listening, thanks for joining us. Keep learning, keep questioning, and keep those deep dives going.
That wraps up this episode. Please check out the author's website at lenhoff.com to access all the research, exhibits, court filings, transcripts, and more. I'm Molly.
And I'm Lester. And we'll see you very soon on the next episode of Hollywood Hustle.